Alright, today's video is going to be on doing some patching on the transom. Now this is going to be a little different. I've done one in the past, but we're not painting this transom. So I'm going to show you a technique that I've picked up that will give us a nice clean white patch without a lot of work. And this works perfectly if all you want to do is patch the old holes that you may have in your boat. This is a 2000 Dauntless, and there's been a plethora of speed sensors and sonar pickups. So we're going to patch all these old holes. I've got some on the other side that's still there. We're going to get rid of this. This was a speed sensor which is no longer in use, and patch up all these holes. This will eventually get painted. I'm going to go with bottom paint over it again. Strip the old one off, the old bottom paint, but it's got an epoxy barrier coat on there, and quite frankly it's just easier to paint it over with a fresh coat of bottom paint. But before we do that, we're going to get all these holes cleaned up. This stays. This is the new fish finder. So let me go ahead and get started. Alright, so we'll start with this guy, and it's got the most holes to play with. Throw that away. Alright, so let me explain what I'm going to do. First I'm going to drill out these holes to have a nice clean interior for the epoxy to adhere to. Then I'm going to use the Loctite marine epoxy. It comes in white, but that's not the end of it. I'm going to cover it with some clear packing tape to give me a smooth surface. We're going to sand it, polish it, or at least get it down to the surface level and polish it. And that'll give you a nice white patch. So before I do that, let me drill these out. I'm going to go with drill bits that are just slightly bigger than the holes I'm going to patch, with the exception of this one. I don't want to make this any bigger than it is already. And I'll show you how we do it from here. Now I'm going to go in. Then I'm going to give it a little bit of a swirl, and I'll explain why in a second. Now the reason I'm giving it this little twirl is to do an inverted triangle, if you will. Here's a little clip from an old video that I did explaining why, and let me go to that clip and we'll come back in a second. So you've got a hole on your fiberglass. Let's look and see how this works and what the best way to patch that is. You've got a hole. Here we go. Here's a hole, and you patch it in with just straight through. And what ends up happening is vibrations, whatnot, expansion, contraction. That little plug will eventually move in or out. And of course that's not what you want when you patch that hole. So what I do is I take a drill bit and move it around so that I end up with cambered edges, if you will. Alright, let's get rid of this drill bit and draw this in real quick, show you what this looks like. Now what this does is that when you patch that patch is locked in there mechanically. Alright, so now you understand why I'm doing that little zigzag movement. It basically creates a pocket behind it that kind of gives you a mechanical hold on this. Now I'm going to have to blow these out, so let me get a small piece of airline tubing and do that. Alright, I've got a small section of airline tubing. Whatever you do, if you're going to do this, don't use compressed air. It's happened to me in the past where I've put compressed air up against one of these holes, blew it, and watched the whole Gelcoat delaminate from the fiberglass. So basically you're better off using low pressure air like I'm going to do. And if you're feeling really squirrely, you can put some acetone in there. It should dry off really quick and it'll help with the epoxy sticking. got a piece of plastic. Epoxy doesn't stick very well to plastic, so that's a good thing. Makes it easier for me to clean it up. Alright, so I'm going to start with the simplest hole. Now here comes the fun part. That is clear packing tape. Now for the clear packing tape. And we'll go ahead and get the other holes done, and then we'll let this cure. Probably come back tomorrow. It's a 2-hour cure. I just soon just let it cure overnight, but I'll get these other holes now, and then we'll come back. So here's another place where this method will work. You see here the gel coat's been cracked and removed, and what I'm doing is putting just a really thin layer of this mixed up stuff on there. And again with the tape. Once this is cured, we'll sand it down lightly. We'll put another layer on, and should be able to fix that missing gel coat there as well. Alright, so it's actually been a few days, and I'm going to get ready to pull that tape off and start sanding. So let me give you a close-up of what it looks like. Well, we've got two sections here. This top one was multiple holes, had that large hole in the center, and that's opened up, so we'll have to add a little bit of epoxy to that. Then there's this one down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel this tape off. Oh, by the way, sometimes it helps if you leave a little fold in the tape. And you can see that epoxy is smoothed out. It's actually kind of shiny, but we're going to be sanding that down. I'm going to start with 220, move up to 400, 800, then 1000. And the reason for that is I want to leave a smooth enough surface here that when we polish it, when we hit it with the polish, we'll get some shine back. So let me go ahead and do that. Now for this one, I'm going to sand this down to 220. And I'm not going to go any further than that. What I want to do is I want to get it to the surface. Then I'm going to fill that in because it's, quite frankly, still has a hole in it. But I will be wet sanding this. So I've got one of these 3M blocks, and I'm going to avoid using mechanical sanding on these. On the lower areas where there's going to be bottom paint, I will mechanical sand. This is just going to be a hand sanded. And what I'm doing is I'm lifting it up and hitting it with the edge. .400 grit. .800 grit. And finally 1000 grit. Now just to be clear, I'm going to have to go back and do this one again, fill in that little hole, that gap. So I'm not going to do the final finish. I'll take it as far as this 800 right now. Dry this out with some acetone and then fill it in, tape it up, and give it a day to cure and come back and do this again. So while we're waiting on that, let's go to another area. Here's the area under the gunnel that we patched in. This is going to take a little bit of sanding and probably another layer of epoxy. So we'll do the same thing. I'll wet sand this down. Being that it's not that visible of an area, I'm going to use just a 200 to get it down to even level with the gel coat. Alright, so I've got another batch mixed up. This is just a small bit of it. And I'm going to carefully fill that hole. Really want to get some pushed in there as much as possible. The air bubble is definitely getting in the way. I think that should be enough. I don't want to put too much in there because then we'll have to sand. This should be good. That one's nice. This one needs a little filling, as does those two. These need a little filling, not a whole lot. Like I said, I don't want to go overboard, because if I have too much on there, then we gotta sand it, so I don't want to do that. Alright, so those two are done. This one right here doesn't need any because, quite frankly, it came out perfect. This one's got a filler, so we'll let it cure. It should cure in 2 hours, but I'm gonna come back tomorrow, sand some more, polish, and then these things will be done then. We'll be ready for whatever's next, which is gonna be the bottom paint. Alright, so round 2 of the epoxy is cured. Let's peel the tape off, get it sanded, and we'll be done then. Let's see what it looks like. Alright, for this spot here, we did one layer, sanded it, did another layer, pulling it off. And what I did was I kind of feathered it in, and I'm leaving this just like this. It's it might be a little bit conspicuous, but it's close enough, and it's protecting the glass underneath, so that's really all I care about. Let's get on to the rest of the boat and do the transom. Again, we'll start with 220. Next we'll hit it lightly with 400. That's the 400. $800. $1,000. So here's what it looks like now. All the excess has been sanded away. I've got another one down there. Here, give you an idea of what that one looks like as well. So it's not a perfect color match, but from a distance it looks decent. It's a good way to patch these holes, especially if you're not going to do a new gel coat or anything like that. You get a little bit of the off-white color, but it's close. And again, it's a decent way to seal up some of those old holes that maybe or may not be letting water into your transom. Alright, so I've got the sanding done with the 1000 grit, and the next step's going to be just run some polishing compound over it and give it a shine. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done, and we'll be done after that. That actually looks pretty damn good. Boom. I hope this video's been helpful to you. If it has, hit share and like, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.